Hello, and welcome to South Carolina Wildlife. I'm Chad Hayes.
And I'm Jean Leitner.
And we're here in the Harbison State Forest, 2,176 acres of forest land just 9 miles from downtown Columbia. It is one of the largest public green spaces within the city limits in the eastern U.S. And it's also the site of our field trip this month, which will roll your way in just a few minutes.
I had the opportunity last week to chat with DNR biologist Lex Glover. Lex is with our wildlife diversity section, and we talked about the special needs of birds during winter. From food to feeders to water to shelter, we'll share with you some points for keeping your feathered friends from getting too frosty this season.
And I don't know about you, Jean, but I can't wait to see what comes crawling out of those boxes in our segment on DNR animal programs. Our education specialists from the Outreach and Support Services Division present dozens of programs to thousands of school children every year. So don't be surprised if you see a snake or two in just a little while.
Then it's back here to Harbison for the field trip.
And since we started with feathers, we'll end with feathers. Palmetto Portraits this month celebrates some of our favorite northern friends, ducks.
Right now, let's join Lex at the Clemson University Research and Education Center at Sand Hill.
Hello, and welcome to South Carolina Wildlife. I'm Chad Hayes. This month, we're coming to you from the Great Pee Heritage Preserve in Darlington County. And this place has a secret, which I'll share with you in just a second. But first, let me ask, have you ever given a friend a lift? Sure you have. But how about a million friends? Well, that's just what happens each spring at the St. Stephen Fish Lift on the Rediversion Canal of the Santee River. My co-host Jean Leitner joined fisheries biologist Steve Leach for a behind-the-scenes tour of this amazing facility. She found quite a few fish that were more than determined to make it to their spawning grounds in the upper Santee. But now, about that secret. I am not the first person to stand in this spot. That might not be a secret or a surprise to you, but a team of archaeologists has discovered artifacts in this area that date back thousands of years. DNR archaeologist Chris Judge and a team of devoted scholars and volunteers travel to this remote patch of forest every spring. And this year, we came along too. Chris will tell us a little about the people that have called this area home and what they left behind here above the waters of the Great Pee River. And our field trip this time takes us to Woods Bay State Natural Area, where a short walk or paddle can take you miles away from the busy world. And despite a shortage of April showers, we found plenty of Mayflowers to share with you in Palmetto Portraits. But first, let's join Jean at the St. Stephen Fish Lift in Berkeley County. A storm that recently moved through the state created a magical effect in the woods at Congaree Creek Heritage Preserve.
We hope you've enjoyed this edition of South Carolina Wildlife.
Don't be surprised if you see a few signs of spring just in time for our next show.
Thanks for watching.
And we'll see you next time.
Race ya.
Ready?
Hello, and welcome to South Carolina Wildlife. I'm Chad Hayes.
And I'm Jean Leitner. Now, those of you who read South Carolina Wildlife magazine might recall that our March show was scheduled to be here at St. Stephen Fish Lift. Well, programming conflicts moved that show to this month. And to teach us a thing or two about trying to predict animal behavior, the fish have decided it's not quite time for their annual migration upstream. So, if the weather and the fish cooperate, we'll be bringing you that story next month.
Now, one thing that is a little easier to predict is that with warmer weather comes increased boating activity. It's also important to remember that there's much more to your day on the water than just gassing the boat and packing a picnic. I spoke with Sergeants Karen Swink and Donnie Pritchard of the Department of Natural Resources about some safety concerns that all boaters need to be made aware of. And that segment will be coming up in just a moment.
Then we move from the water to the woods. What happens when 39 kids and their 39 coonhounds all get to stay up past their bedtime? For us, it signaled the annual youth coon hunt at Webb Wildlife Center. This story was great fun, and we decided to have the kids, the parents, and maybe even a dog or two be our narrators for this one.
And if you're a history buff, you're going to love our field trip. You can almost imagine the battle scene as we travel to Blackstock Battlefield, a Revolutionary War site in Union County.
And with warm weather on our minds, it seems only fitting that we say farewell to winter with a visit to a snow-covered waterfowl management area on the Broad River in Fairfield County. Be sure to stay with us for Palmetto Portraits.
But now, let's join Sergeant Donnie Pritchard as we launch our boating safety talk.
All right, here we go.
Now, Donnie, safety is a primary concern for all boaters, whether you're inland or on the ocean waters. Could you maybe go over a few of the safety requirements that the state of South Carolina has for being on the water?
Well, Chad, you're exactly right. Safety is the big issue in the state of South Carolina. If we look back at our statistics, how we teach our education classes, last year 90% of our fatalities, which we had 33, were drownings. And so the number one piece of safety equipment that we can talk about is probably life jackets or personal flotation devices. They come in a variety of different styles, shapes, and colors. Main thing is to get one that you're more apt to use and more apt to wear, because if you buy something just because you have to have it, you may not use it. If you buy something that's comfortable, then you'll be more apt to use it, and that's the only way it's going to help you out on the water.
Sure.
Probably the most important piece of equipment I could recommend, type of life jacket, is the Type 1. On the coast, we have a lot of offshore fishing, and this life jacket is by far the very best one for going offshore. Turn you from a face down to a face up position, has 22 pounds of buoyancy. Comes with reflective tape, and you can also buy them, or you can buy a separate strobe light that will come on it and help you at night in case you're out there on the water. In the early spring, I recommend a flotation suit. It's a Type 5 device. When the water's still very cold and the air temperature can be chilly out on the water because of how cold the water temperature is, this flotation suit or survival suit is a very good piece of equipment for boating on the coast and inland as well. Some other safety equipment that's also required on coastal waters, only on the coast, is visual distress signals. They're required if you're in a boat less than 6
tribes frequently traverse these woodlands to an ancient fording location on the Broad River. These days, you're more likely to see a jogger or a mountain biker. Regardless of your pursuit, there's plenty to see and do in this month's field trip to Harbison State Forest. The South Carolina Forestry Commission operates Harbison State Forest.
Welcome to South Carolina Wildlife. I'm Jean Leitner.
And I'm Chad Hayes. And this low country landscape behind us is just a small part of Bono Ferry. The Department of Natural Resources is fortunate to now manage this 7,000-acre historic site near Moncks Corner. Eventually, the property will encompass over 10,000 acres along the eastern branch of the Cooper River. And we'll take you on a quick tour as we move through our show.
And speaking of the show, it's another good one. Our first story begins just up the road at the Bayless Striped Bass Hatchery in St. Stephen. And Chad, pardon the pun here, but there's something fishy going on up there.
Just how fishy, Jean?
Well, the day we visited, there were many, many fishies. I had fun working with my fellow DNR fisheries biologists and technicians as they worked with the male and female striped bass broodstock. They showed us how they produce millions of stripers at the facility each year that are raised and then stocked in fresh waters across the state. Did you know that the striped bass is the official state fish of South Carolina?
I did not know that, Jean.
Well, it is. And many of those waterways would have no stripers were it not for the Bayless Hatchery.
Well, in the spirit of pun-upmanship, may I say that our next story is going to the dogs, much like our dogs are coming to us. Come on, Sam. Good boy. This is my dog, Sam.
And this is my dog, Shatza.
And we brought these guys along with us today to help introduce our story on Boykin Spaniels. We recently traveled to a field trial sponsored by the Carolina Boykin Spaniel Retriever Club at Sand Hill State Forest. And you'll get a chance to see the Boykins work in the field and in the water. And from puppies to seasoned hunters, you'll get a thorough look at the state dog of South Carolina.
Then we'll journey north to Greenville County. There, astride Little Gap Creek, near Travelers Rest, is Poinsett Bridge. It's our state's oldest surviving bridge, built in the early 1800s. It was built along the state road that once connected coastal South Carolina with Tennessee. Now a heritage preserve, It offers 120 acres of natural beauty, history, and of course, some wildlife.
And I promise this is my last pun, but our Palmetto Portrait segment truly does have its ups and downs. We'll greet the sun as it rises across some beautiful South Carolina vistas and say goodbye as its light